In this video, we will write two helper functions that will increase the functionality of our game that we've created in the last video. Realize that I had to figure out exactly what I wanted that hint to look like and then determine the best data structure. So if you sort of look right here, I had to figure out that I wanted the hint to look like this. When you type in H, what I intended on doing was give you all of the guesses that you guessed up to that particular point, tell you the number that you guessed on that guess number 1, and then tell you that the secret number is greater than 23. And then your second attempt was an 89, and then tell you the secret number is less than 89, so that you can look at this hint and say very quickly that, hey, my number must be between 23 and 89. And if there were other ones, you would be able to deduce sort of where your based on the things that you've already guessed, where your secret number is at and where your next guess should be. So that's the idea behind that first helper function. We're going to take a data structure that looks like this and turn it into this guy. So that's the idea. And then the next helper function we're going to do is we're going to validate our user input. So the idea here is that if you enter in something that doesn't work, like we did in the last video, and it gave you an error, I don't want errors anymore. I want it to basically say, give you some sort of message like ensure your guess, meets this criteria, and then try and give the user another chance to do it. Well, this user was a knucklehead and put a 3.5 in it that was not an integer, and then it basically gives you the same message, and then finally we got an integer. In order to be able to do that, we're going to use our very first try except code. And so the way try except works is that you can give it some code in this try block, and if the try block ends up having an error, it will not execute that, and it will come down and it will execute your except block. And so the idea is that you can try to do something in here, and if that doesn't work, then your except block will work instead. So for example, if I tried to turn this into an integer, then that wouldn't work. It would give you an error, and what's going to happen is it's going to go and do your except. So you're going to know that it's not an integer, and you're going to do something different down here. Okay, well, let's jump into Spider and see the table of guess. So this was one of our helper functions that we defined last time, and the only thing that it did so far is it just passed. Remember, all I'm trying to do is get this data structure, this get. So let's create this thing first, and I want to pass this into that function, and then we'll do it. So we'll say guess. I'll call it GL, guess list, is equal to. Remember, it's a nested list. The first thing is the number, and the second thing is either a less than or greater than. I think this one's a greater than. And then another one would be the second number, and I think it's an 89. And less than. Okay, so this is an example of the data structure that I want to send into this thing that's called guess list, and then we want for it to print out what I just showed you. So print. And then this is the first line of the code. Guess number comparison. And then a for loop. So for I comma guess in enumerate guess list, right? So it's going to give me the index and the number that's in this guess list, and then we want to go through and we want to do a print f string. So I'm going to put an f string on there, and then the way that we're going to do that is I plus 1, because we know this is a zero index language, and then you have to count. So how many do I want to put in here? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7. So I want to pad it by 7. So whatever the number is, I want it to have 7 spaces to the left and to the right. So I need to make sure that this is centered as well. So that's the format spec that I'm going to use. And then I need another one. So guess 0, right? So guess 0 is the number. And then we're going to format spec it in the middle. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there must be 8 eight spaces that I want this thing to take up, and then it's going to pad it with a space otherwise. And then the last thing is we're going to put this little, so I'm using a single quote here. Notice that it doesn't close out my double quote because we're going to want to, so number plus guess 1, right? So if this was guess 0, this would be guess 1, because guess is in this guess list is taking off one of these at a time. So that's the first one that would come, and this would be guess the second time that it goes through. It's going to take this piece off. I will be 0 here. I will be 1 here, and then the 89 would be guess 0, right? So that would be the index 0 to get the number out, and the guess 1 would get the greater than less than out. So that's why I'm doing that. And then plus, and then what you have to do is turn this thing into a, so I'm putting a space in between there. Then you have to turn the next thing into a string because it's a number and it won't like it if you just pass in a number. So you turn it into a string, and then we're going to give it a format spec of centered again, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12. So I want 12. I want this thing to take up 12 spaces, regardless of how big it is, and pad everything with a. Yeah, I don't need another one of these, but I do need another end it. Okay. So I think that's it. Let's find out what happens. And so this is sort of my testing area. Testing. And let's find out what happens. Didn't like it. What did I not do? F string expression nested too deeply. So, oh, I didn't end it. So I got to end this and that one. I got to end this one, and I need to end that one. Okay, let's try it again. Oh, I didn't call it. Table of guesses, and then throw in guess list. So I can hit F9. And it does what we expect it to do, right? So it puts the spaces in there, it lines everything up the way that we want it to do, and I believe this is what we want it to look like. So we are done with the table of guesses. I think that's all you need to do. The next thing we want to do is validate. So we want to validate our guess. The things that we need for in the validate is I'm gonna go ahead and call guess lists this table of guesses if it's an H, and I'm going to need this N here because I'm going to keep asking the same question, so I need to know that information as well. And then we're going to say guess underscore valid. We're going to initialize this to false, and then while not false, right? So while it's true, so guess valid. Maybe there's a better way of doing that. Maybe you should call it something different, but this is the way I sort of thought about it. And then guess is equal to input. Oh, I'm just going to copy this one down here. Control C, Control V. Right, so that becomes my place where I ask the user to give me a number. And then the things that you want to, that we need, that we can do here is just guess is equal to guess dot upper, and we know if it's a number, then it won't do anything. If it's a letter, it'll make it a capital letter, so that'll work. And then we need to try. So that try except clause I was talking about. If I want to turn this thing into an integer, so guess equals to int guess. So if that works, then guess valid true. We want to return that. So we want to return the integer guess and the fact that guess valid. So and we can use that later on, but for right now, what I'm returning is that number. So I'm returning two things in this tuple list. And if that doesn't work, in other words, it's not an integer, if your guess is not an integer, then we need to do something different, right? So if guess is really equal to, remember I already turned it into an uppercase letter, right? So if it's equal to Q, then we want to return that our guess valid is true. So it's a true, it is a good valid guess. And we want to also return guess and guess valid. All right, so if that's true, then that's what's going to happen. If guess is equal to H, then we're going to do something a little different. We're going to print out, we're going to do our table of guesses, and then pass in your guess list. So we're going to do that. We're going to do guess valid equals true. And then we're going to now set guess equal to 0, and I'm going to return guess and guess valid. All right, and then what happens next is the input, the stuff that we want to do if this thing is still not valid, right? So we're still in our while statement, so I'm going to come outside the except, and now I'm going to say print that other little thing that basically said ensure something to the effect of your guess ensure your guess is an integer or a Q for quit or an H for hint. So basically on the user you need to do something different than what you just did. And maybe that'll work. Let's see. So we want to validate. So we got to call it. So another little area. We want to call validate. And let's have GL 100 and F9. So you got to call and then come over here and put in a number. 1 true. So that's good. So 1 true is good. F9, but if I put in some funky stuff, it tells you no, you got to do something different. If I put in a number that's not an integer, and if I put in 4 is true. All right, let's make sure H works and Q works. So if Q, then Q, so it's producing a capital Q and it's telling you that it's a valid input. And then finally, if I do an H, then it does what we suspect it should do. So it returns a 0. It tells you that it's true, and we're going to use this 0 later on. It tells you that it is valid, and it also produces our table that we were doing earlier. So numbers greater than 23, numbers less than 89. Okay, well that's all I got for this video. What we're going to do next video is we're going to take these helper functions and we're going to put them inside of this in order to increase our functionality and make the game do exactly what we want it to do. All right, that's all I got. See you guys next time.